In this video, I'm going to show you how I paint Sons of Horus. Hello everyone and welcome to another Brushstroke painting guide. So this time, as you can see, we're going to be looking at painting some Horus Heresy figures. This particular figure is from the recently released Age of Darkness box set, which the amazing people at Games Workshop were very kind enough to send me a review copy of. So the plan is this is going to be the first in a short series of Horus Heresy painting guides, and of course where better to start than the Sons of Horus themselves. But before we do get stuck into that painting, I just want to do my usual thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel so far. If you're new to the channel or you haven't subscribed yet, then please do click that subscribe button now, and don't forget the notification bell to be told whenever I post another video. And of course I'll be listing, as usual, in the description below all the paints and the models that I use in this video and where you can get those at discount prices. And in fact, actually all the paints are available in a single click bundle courtesy of Element Games, so that makes it really easy for you to pick up all the paints you're going to need. So with that said, and hopefully you've pushed that subscribe button, let's get on with some painting. And straight away you're going to see I've already primed this model ready for painting with some Vallejo primer, and I'm going to be painting it in sub-assemblies, which is mainly just to help you guys see the details as I paint them. If you'd like to know more details exactly how I prime and prepare my models for painting, then please do check out this video above. Right then, okay, so let's make a start, and the first step we're going to do is we're going to paint in all the armor joints, and for this I'm going to use some Eshen Grey from Games Workshop. The main thing you're aiming for here is to make sure that you get the paint on cleanly and smoothly. You don't need to be particularly neat because we're going to be painting in all the details later anyway, so you just need to concentrate on getting it on nice and smooth. Now to do that, you're going to need to add a little bit of water because straight from the pot you'll find it's a bit too gloopy. So you add that little bit of water and that will help it flow nice and cleanly from your brush, and then you just work it into all of these grooves and joints on the armor. Now, because we're painting over a nice light primer, you're not going to need many coats. In fact, I think I did most of this with just a single coat. But if you do find that it's a little patchy and a bit see-through, then do let it dry and apply a second coat to build up to a solid finish. Now with all of those armor joints painted in with the Eshen Grey, we can move on to painting the main colour of the armor. And for this I'm going to use some Sons of Horus green from Games Workshop. So this stage is pretty much the same as we've just done with the Eshen Grey, in that you want to apply the paint cleanly and smoothly, and to do that you're going to need to thin it down with some water. It's particularly important that you get the base coat for the armor nice and smooth because it's going to be a main feature of the model. So this time you do want to make sure that you just take your time and don't rush things. Keep your paint nice and thin, like I say. I applied this over 3 layers to build up to a solid colour. Try and be careful when you're painting next to the grey that you've already painted. If you do make any mistakes, don't worry, just let it dry and then go back in and neaten everything back up with some Eshen Grey. So with that armor painted in, you should now have something that looks something a bit like this. So moving on to the next step, and we're going to now paint in any silver details. That's things like these grenades, vents on the back of the legs, backpack, bolter, that kind of thing. And for this we're going to use some graphite from Darkstar Miniatures. Now, if you're not familiar with Darkstar miniature paints, then I do highly recommend that you check them out. Personally, I think they're amongst the best metallics you can get for miniature painting because they're really rich and they have a very fine metallic fleck, which means they go on very smoothly too. And the best thing of all is actually the dropper bottles actually come with agitators, which makes them really easy to mix. As with the previous base coats, what I've done to this paint is I've added that little bit of water on my palette to help it flow cleanly and smoothly, and I'm going to apply it as a couple of thin layers just to build up to a solid colour. Moving on now to the next step, which is going to be painting in any black details. This is things like the shoulder pad armor, any details on the helmet, gun casing, that kind of thing. And for this I'm going to use some flat black from scale 75. So exactly the same process that we've been doing for the previous stages, that little bit of water to help it flow cleanly and smoothly. This time obviously we've got a lot more colours to be careful of, so just take your time and try and be as neat as possible. Obviously any mistakes that do happen could just be neatened up once it's dry. Moving on to the next step now, and that's going to be painting in all of the brass details. And we're going to start off with a base coat of Runelord brass from Games Workshop. So, truth be told, Runelord brass is a lovely colour, but it does like to separate very quickly on your palette. So, first of all, make sure you give it a great shake in the pot. I've actually taken to having an agitator in there, just to make sure it gets that extra mix. And then do keep an eye on it on the palette to make sure that you mix it and keep it from separating. Other than that, you can treat it just the same as we have been. So a little bit of water, help it flow nice and cleanly and smoothly, and paint it in onto all of those details. Obviously taking care that you don't get it onto any of the paintwork that you already have, but as before, any mistakes, let it dry and neaten back up with whichever colour you need. You will find that once you've thinned this paint, the coverage isn't brilliant, so this is definitely one of those cases where you'll need to do multiple layers to build up to a solid colour. And then finally, for our base coating, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to apply a glaze of a 50-50 mix of Runelord brass and graphite from Darkstar Miniatures. And what I mean by a glaze is I've thinned this mixture down to a consistency of almost like a wash. So it's very liquid, very fluid, and I'm actually just going to use that to tint all of the brass areas and just change them so they're a little bit lighter. You're actually just going to apply it to all of the raised areas and leave just the neat Runelord brass in all of the recesses, and that'll just give a little bit of a two-tone effect to the brass details. It's very subtle and the camera's not picking it up very well, but you'll notice it as you paint it, and it'll make it a lot shinier and a lot brighter on those raised areas. Unlike the previous stages, we're not looking to build this up to a solid colour. In fact, actually, it's quite the opposite. We just want this to be a very thin single layer across the top, and all it'll do is tint the surface and make it a slightly different tone and just give it that extra bit of shine. Okay, so that's all of the base coats done now, and now we can start adding some shadow to those colours. I'm going to start off with the Eshin Grey and Silver areas, and I'm going to apply a wash of Null Oil from Games Workshop to all of those details. Very simple step this. All you need to do is apply the wash straight out of the bottle and onto the model. The only bit that you need to be a little bit careful of is that you only apply it to the areas that you want, so try and take your time and be as neat as possible. If you do get it onto some of the colours that you didn't mean to, then let it fully dry and then you can neaten back up with whichever colour you need. As you're applying the wash, what you're looking to do is get it to settle into all of those recesses and details, and that'll bring that extra depth and shadow. So just work it around and encourage it to settle into all of those areas. Now you will find that washes take that little bit extra time to dry compared to paints, so make sure that they are fully dry before moving on to the next stage. And that next stage is going to be shading all of the green armour, and for this I'm actually going to use a heavily thinned down contrast paint from Games Workshop. So I'm going to use Pterodon Turquoise thinned down with some contrast medium. Now the ratio that you're looking for this mixture is 5 parts contrast medium to 1 part turquoise, and the reason for it being so thinned down is 2 parts. First of all, the contrast paint on its own is very, very potent, and secondly, because we only want this to settle into the recesses, so by making it very thin it means that it won't settle on any of those flat areas and hopefully shouldn't give you any watermarks. So just apply this as you would any other wash, but encourage it into all of those creases and recesses and try and make it so that it only tints the very top surfaces. And then when that's fully dry, you should have something that looks like this. Now you might find the contrast is pretty shiny when it's dry, so at this stage you could apply a matte varnish, or even just give it a coat of Lahmian medium to dull down that shine. Which brings us on to the last shade, and that's going to be to all of the brass details, and I'm going to apply Agrax Earthshade from Games Workshop. Another very simple step then, just apply it straight out of the bottle onto all of the brass details, encourage it to settle into all of those recesses, and as before, make sure it's fully dry before moving on to the next stage. and that next stage is going to be applying an edge highlight to all of the green armor, and for this I'm going to use some Cybright green from Games Workshop. Now, I won't lie, this is by far the most time consuming step of the whole paint job, but it is definitely worth taking your time and getting as neat as possible. If you'd like some tips and tricks in terms of how to improve your edge highlighting, then please do check out the video I made by clicking the link above. Generally though, the purpose of this stage is to work your way around the model, picking out all of these edges and highlighting them with the Cybright green. Now, you can do this a couple of ways. You can use the tip of the brush, the edge of the brush, all of which are explained in that video. As I say, this will take a bit of time to do, but believe me, the more you do, the easier it gets, and it's definitely worth taking your time to get it right. So just work your way around, and actually it can be quite therapeutic after a while, just zoning out and getting those edges done. Good news! All of the green armor is now edge highlighted, and on to the next stage, and you'll be pleased to know it's more edge highlighting. This time it's all the black areas, and for this I'm going to use graphite from scale 75. So yes, it is more edge highlighting, but it is by no means anywhere near as much as the green armor was. So just again, work your way around all the black details like this gun casing and then the shoulder pads, etc., and it'll be done in no time. Just one final highlight left to do, and that's the brass details, and for this I'm not going to do an edge highlight. I'm actually going to do more of a glaze like we did before, and I'm just going to use some pure graphite from Darkstar Miniatures. So just as we did before, I've thinned this down so it's more like a wash or a glaze, and I'm applying it to the topmost areas just to bring back some extra shine to these brass details. Now, as you're working around, if you do notice any silver details which you feel could do with a bit of an edge highlight, such as the bayonet here, then by all means do just use a bit of graphite just to pick out that extra definition on these edges. And with that final highlight done, it's time to get the model assembled and based up. And as you can see, I've gone for a bit of a Mars base, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to show you how I do that weathering on the feet. And for this, I'm going to apply a bit of a dry brush of a weathering powder, and I'm going to use Cromlech's Orange Rust. Now, this is a really simple step to do, but it is a bit messy, so be warned, maybe put some paper down because this stuff goes everywhere. Now what you do is you work it into your bristles of your dry brush just like you would do any paint, and you can flick it across the surface and work it into the areas that you'd like to be dusty, and you just build it up to the level that you're happy with. Now if you do go a bit over the top and you want to take a bit off, then what I recommend you do is you just use a damp Q-tip or cotton bud, and then you can just rub that off and add a little bit more until you're ready and you're happy that it looks how you want. And when you are happy that it's finished, you're going to need to seal it so it doesn't rub off, and to do that what you need to do is apply a matte varnish either by a rattle can or by airbrush. With that weathering powder now sealed, our Sons of Horus Marine is complete. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, then please hit that like button and drop a comment below. If you'd like to see more Horus Heresy content, then again, please drop me a comment below and let me know what you'd like to see. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this channel is only possible because of the support of you guys, so if you'd like to see more videos and support the channel, then please do hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be told whenever I post another video. As I also mentioned, all of the paints and the models I've used in this video will be listed in the description below, along with links of where you can get them from at discount prices, so please do check out those links as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.